This week's Torah reading deals with gruesome details of infection, disease, contagion, quarantine, descriptions in quite a bit of detail, and it really is a challenging read. And in previous years, these are one of those readings where we read it through, but we're not as engaged because it doesn't speak to us so much. We don't have leprosy around us. We have walk-in clinics if we notice something and we want it dealt with quickly. We have medication that we can access quite quickly. And it really, in previous years, was one of those readings where we read it through. But this year, actually, it does speak to us quite a bit. When we look at what the Torah is telling us, the details, the particulars of it, it opens the question that is probably the focus of where everything is leading. Because the Torah addresses when all is said and done, when everything has been taken care of, when the illness is overcome and the person is pronounced healthy and now needs to go home, now what? And that's actually the question that we haven't addressed in great detail in the world today, and the Torah is addressing it in great detail. How do you bring yourself to get close to someone who had been so contagious, so risky? Even if now we're being told they're not contagious, they're not risky, but how do we bring ourselves there? How do we get to the point where we now actually are able to get close to each other? How are we comfortable having proximity back in our daily realities? When the doors open for gatherings, how do we bring ourselves to go back? If we lost trust in some government officials in the process of all of this, do we trust when they tell us now it's safe? Do we trust when they tell us these people are fine? If trust was breached, how do we rebuild it? And how do we make ourselves comfortable with getting back together again? And that's the part of this parsha that opens up for us the discussion of transitions. And it is focusing on transitions. Transitional moments in Judaism actually appear throughout the Torah. The very first one is with Adam and Eve. When Adam is put to sleep and Eve is created, the very real question is, why put him to sleep? It's God. Just make Eve. Make Eve in a second. Make even a nanosecond. It's God. Why are you putting Adam to sleep? Are you worried it'll hurt Adam? But it's God. It can happen any way that God wants it to happen. And God wants it to happen by putting Adam to sleep. And when we look and we ask why, we understand that while we are sleeping, transitions occur. We dream. We know time is passing, but we are not aware of what's going on around us. Adam will wake up to meet Eve, and he will know time has passed, things have changed. It isn't instantaneous because time did pass while he was sleeping. And when we are asleep, we know that happens. Sleep is transitional time in Judaism, and we use it. So we understand at the very beginning of humanity that God is telling us transitions are important. We see it again when Moses is up on Mount Sinai getting the 10 Commandments, and it's taking 40 days and 40 nights, and in fact, because he's going to be a little bit late, we end up with a golden calf. And of course, we're going to ask, why? Why did it even take 40 days, let alone a little bit late? What's going on that's taking so long? This is God. Just make the 10 Commandments. Just have them ready. Bring them down. Why is it even taking any time at all? And the commentaries answer and say, and Rashi in particularly answers and says, God is pausing after every sentence because Moses is reading it. And God is allowing Moses processing time. Time to read and transition. Time to understand what the world might look like when this actually gets down the mountain. Transition time. Processing time, that's what's taking 40 days. It's not how long it takes God to write a sentence. It's how long it takes Moses to transition and process. And then Rashi says, and if Moses needs it, how much more do all of us need it? The understanding, never take away the transitional moments from anybody. It's huge. And when we look at that and we now talk about, okay, where else might we see it? And we see it everywhere. In the laws of warfare, the Torah tells us when an army comes back from war and they are victorious, you keep them out of the cities. They go back to their home city, but they do not enter the city. They stay outside for 7 days. They stay with their comrades, with their brothers in arms. They don't go home. Why? So they can transition back. They're coming from warfare. That's huge. The rules are different, the laws are different, the reality is different, they're paced differently, they're looking at things differently, and warfare is bloody. There's a bloodlust that needs to calm down. You do not put them back into a city. Bad for them, bad for their family, bad for society. Allow them to transition. We see it everywhere when we look in the Torah. And this week, in the reading, we see the same thing occurring with sick people. When the Torah is talking about what do we do with someone who has actually survived leprosy. The disease in the ancient world, everyone is afraid of. There is no cure. It is unbelievably contagious. It is life-changing. Even if you survive it, chances are the person does not survive it whole. The question of how do I bring that person back in? And the Torah says, okay, so when a person is cured of leprosy, first of all, their clothes are burned, their heads are shaved, they are washed, they are cleansed, they are declared healthy by the expert. Next step, Torah says, they enter the camp, but they don't enter their tent. They go to their home, but they stay outside their tent for 7 days. They are in transition, and everyone around them is in transition. They don't enter their home yet. The home needs to acclimate and understand them coming back in. Society needs to understand they're safe, they're fine, they're back among us in stages, in transitional moments. We're rebuilding trust within those 7 days. We're all transitioning, says the Torah, not just the person who was healed. That's how the Torah tells us the ancient world is to handle it. The details change, but the sensitivity the Torah is teaching us remains the same. We're in the midst of a global pandemic that challenges us with its contagion and its life-altering trauma. We are so focused on this moment that we want to make sure we hear that the Torah is telling us there will be moments after. There's the next moment. There's the next stage. When we're all through it, it doesn't mean the challenge is over. It means the challenge has changed. How do we welcome everybody back together again? How do we rebuild trust and allow ourselves and everyone to transition? And part of it is to allow anyone affected directly by it the time they need in the security of transition. They set the pace. There is no rush. It is their timetable, as long as transition is occurring. Some people may run to each other, grab each other in a big hug. Some people might prefer to just sit next to someone within 6 feet, closer than they've gotten in a very long time. There is no right or wrong. Strengthening all of us at that moment is the Torah reminding us that the transitions are crucial and there must be room for them. People might need time and pacing as we rediscover what it is to be together and to always feel safe.